This lesson is on measures of variation. So far we've been focusing mostly on the middle of our data, finding the mean or the median, kind of that middle section. But now we're going to talk about the variation in the data. How spread out is it? Is it all clumped together? Is it spread way out? Are there any random pieces that are kind of way away from everything else? Those are the kind of things we're going to be looking at for today. So get your notes set up, get your learning target filled in. We have a new one, and then our I can statement. I can calculate the measures of variation and can use that information to describe the set of data.
All right, again, in red is our first directions. You have to put the data in order first, and a couple of examples will force you to do that today, and more vocabulary that is going to come into play with this lesson. Our first word is kind of a review. High minus the low is the range, don't you know? So you're going to subtract those two. Our basis of our word today is on quartiles. If you think quarters, there's 4 quarters in a dollar. Quartiles are going to divide your data into 4 equal parts. The first quarter, around the median, and then the third quartile. The first quartile is going to be the middle or the median of the lower half of the data values. The third quartile is going to be the median of the upper half of the data values. So you're going to find the middle, which is your median, and then we're going to work on finding the median of the upper and lower half of the data values. And once we have those quartiles identified, we're going to subtract them and call it the interquartile range, or the IQR, so you don't have to write it out. It's so long.
All right, so let's try our first example together. The nice part about this one is we've already put the numbers in order. So let's go ahead and find our range. That's our high minus our low. So we have a low of 0, a high of 8. So that's a difference of 8 for a range. Our median, same thing we've been doing before. Find the middle number in our list. So we can kind of cross one out from either end. This time, instead of crossing them out, we're just going to put a little dot above them, just because we're going to have to go back to this set of data quite a few times. So we don't want to cross them out so we can't read them. So we just kind of sort back and forth, 1 from each end.
Uh-oh, there's a middle.
And we end up with 2 in the middle. So like we've been practicing, when there's 2 numbers in the middle, we need to find the middle of those 2 numbers. So what's halfway in between 3 and 4? Well, in between we have 3.5 or 3.5. That's going to be our median. Now we get to our new parts. The first quartile, as Mrs. King said, that's the middle or the median of the lower half of your data. So now we take all these numbers lower than the median, below the median. We're going to find the middle of those. So here I'm going to go ahead and do my crossing out.
Ticky, cross out.
I have no idea what she's singing. We have 2 in the middle. So again, we got to find the middle of those 2 numbers. In between 1 and 2 is 1.5. So that's our first quartile. Then we do the same thing for the upper half. So these 8 numbers are the upper half. We search for our median, our middle. Again, we're left with 2 numbers in the middle. So we split the difference. We find halfway in between them. Between 6 and 7 is 6.5. So that is our third quartile, is 6.5.
Some of you are going to need a calculator for this interquartile range, because lining up the decimals is definitely an issue.
So for interquartile range, or IQR, you're going to subtract your first and your third quartiles from each other. So 6.5 minus 1.5 gives us an interquartile range of 5. So we found the middle of the data, then we found the middle of each half of the data, and then we found the distance in between those.
And our data is not that spread out. There's only 5 in between our lower half and our upper half of the data. All right, example 1. We've got the votes received for student government president. And the first thing we need to do is put it in order. So you'll have a 2, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 2 18s, a 20, and a 21, sorry.
Sorry, I'm a little slow.
All right, then the high minus the low, so it would be 21 minus 2 for the range, which gives you a total of 19. Now on to the median. Dot away, high and low. This time it should work out very nicely, giving us a middle number of 15.
So our median is 15.
When we work out our quartiles, we really need to make sure that 15 does not get in the upper or the lower quartile. 15 is going to stand by itself when there's one median. So from 2 to 14, we find our lower median, which is our quartile 1, and we identify that as number 12. And then we work our way up to the upper half. So cross off 17, 21, 18, 20, and you're left with 18 for quartile 3. So we have all of our vocabulary words identified, and we can just subtract 18 minus 12 for the IQR range. Quartile 3 minus quartile 1 gives us 6 data points between our quartile 1 and our quartile 3.
So that's kind of a measurement of how spread out is the data. So from the lower quarter to the upper quarter, how far apart are those numbers? In this case, they're relatively close together. So we have one more vocabulary term. It's called an outlier. Okay? A way to think about an outlier is it's a data value that doesn't match everything else. It's way out there. It's either way too small or way too big in comparison to everything else. Our definition is it needs to be more than 1.5 times our interquartile range. So let's go ahead and figure that out for this problem we just got done with. We said our first quartile was 12, our third quartile was 18, and we had a range of 6, or an interquartile range of 6.
Using your calculator, you're going to multiply 6 times 1.5, and you're going to get the answer of 9. So they're saying anything that is 9 above your third quartile, so 18 plus 9, or anything 9 below your first quartile is going to be an outlier. In this data set, we actually do have one that is lower than 3. The data point 2 would be considered an outlier. It's significantly farther apart than the rest of the data from the median.
So we found our interquartile range, multiplied times 1.5 to figure out how much are we allowed to be away from those. And then we use those quartiles, the first and third. We said, is anything 9 less than that one or 9 more than that one? Those qualify as an outlier. All right, so we've got 2 practice problems for us. If you think you're comfortable with this one, you can try this one on your own. If not, let's work through this one together, and then you're going to try the next one on your own. So our first step is let's put our numbers in order. So we have 14, 19, 27, 28, 28, 30, and 51. Mrs. King's double checking, make sure I didn't miss anything.
You're good.
Okay, find your range. So 51 minus 14 should be 37 if I did it right.
Mental math, good.
Okay, then we find our median. You'll notice there's 7 numbers. It's an odd number, so there should be one number left for us in the middle.
There it is, 28.
So 28 is my median.
All right, not including 28, you're going to find the median of the lower quartile, which stands out pretty easily. 19 is our first quartile. And then we look up above, and we have 30 standing alone for quartile 3.
So we found the middle of the whole data set. Then we found the middle of the upper and lower halves.
So for IQR, you're doing 30 minus 19, which gives you a total of 11.
And then our outliers. Well, remember, we want to take the IQR, 11, times 1.5. So that's why we have a calculator. 11 times 1.5, I believe, is 16.5.
Check.
So what we want to do is look at our first quartile and our third quartile. Is there a number that is 16.5 away from it? So from 19 down to 14. That's much less than 16.5, so 14 wouldn't work. Here we have 30. Think about 30 plus 16.5. That would give me 46.5. Well, we've got a number that is bigger than 46.5. It's more than 16.5 away from this number, so our outlier would be 51. So last problem is for you to do, and we'll go over it together in class. Start by putting the numbers in order, find your range, your median, and then calculate the rest of your numbers. And then we'll go over everything together tomorrow in class.